the Irrational Confidence Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it's week number 10. 10. It's a 10. Guys, I love that quote from Varsity Blues, man. That was a great movie. I'm joined by my co-host, the man who tried out to be an extra for Varsity Blues, but just didn't make the cut. My co-host, Fresh. Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
Haps, fresh off the plane back from Vegas. It's a heck of a weekend. A lot of bets were hit. A lot of money was made. Good times across the board for everybody. But ready to be back in the saddle. Can't believe it's week 10. We're hitting the double-digit number. It feels like we were just doing conference previews and preseason top 25s back in May and June, and here we are. End of October, November 2nd on Saturday. Wow, I mean, the games start becoming more magnified now. You have less chance to make up room, and you've got to be on your P's and Q's, dotting your I's and cross your T's the rest of the way.
Yeah, it's been a crazy college football season. There's so many things that have happened that, I don't think many college football fans expected. I think there's been a little bit of chaos, things that we thought going into this season, proving the fact that, as much as you want to think that you know about college football, a lot of things change. Few things remain the same, but it is what it is.
Depth has been a test for all the bigger teams. How their depth, how they getting younger players playing faster and not letting them get the transfer portal. Our guys getting arrested a little bit longer than they could have been playing in a normal, in prior seasons where he had to win games, he didn't have as much wiggle room. So we're seeing some of that where different philosophies are taking place, and games are much more competitive across the board. A lot of parity.
This is going to be one heck of a month to end the college football season. So don't miss out on any of the action. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, get notified every single time we drop a new episode. That's all I'm going to say on that. Fresh, let's get a rolling here. We're going to the ACC. This is a pretty ACC heavy weekend this week. The Virginia Tech Hokies, they're 5-3 on the year, 3-1 in the ACC. They're going up to the Dome up in Syracuse. Syracuse 5-2 on the season, 2-2 in the ACC. Currently, at time of record, Virginia Tech's a 4-point road favorite. Over/under is set at 53.5. Fresh, we've been waiting for this. I mean, personally, you and me, we've been waiting for Virginia Tech to kind of rise from the ashes like a Hokie phoenix that brings back the day of yesteryear and yore when Virginia Tech was a national powerhouse. Syracuse has done a nice, commendable job. They looked awful last week. Kyle McCord with the 5 interceptions. 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 for a pick 6. I don't know. Is Vegas overreacting to – is it like a prisoner of the moment where they're saying, hey, look at what Syracuse was? Has defenses figured out what Syracuse is doing right now? I don't know. What you got for Virginia Tech, Syracuse?
We'll start with Virginia Tech. They got beat by Vandy. We all thought that was a terrible loss at the beginning of the year. It's actually looked like a pretty solid loss. They kind of were working themselves through some stuff in the beginning of the year, and it went down to Miami. They should have won that game. I think that if they had won the game, we probably wouldn't get the higher quality of play we've gotten recently from the Hokies because it kind of galvanized them. They were like, all right, we're going to control our own stuff and get our dubs up. We can't leave it up for chance. Because in that case, kind of ref maybe had a say in it. You see them play better, play more confident, drones making big-time throws. And that's where they built some momentum. Being in the ACC race, being a playoff spot is kind of we're past that. I don't really think they're being much of a challenging perspective, but showing their progress, showing the growth of the program there. The return is what you're seeing. Momentum building. Maybe a little bit late, but we're seeing that they could have quit, they could have given up, and now they're playing at a high level. Drones, I think, has really shown that ability to lock in, hit his receivers, use the ground game. The defense is playing better as well. So all in all, for Brent Pry, things are going pretty well there in Blacksburg. The other side, Fran Brown coming up to Syracuse, has had a great start, running a lot of transfers, sort of overhauled that program up there real quick. Kyle McCord being the number one player, obviously, on that team in that position. But they have attacked up to this point. We thought Georgia Tech was rolling. They destroyed, they beat Georgia Tech early in the year, and it kind of made us like, hey, don't forget about us. We're Syracuse. They fought back and through. They've had some good wins, maybe some close losses, some weird losses. And then last week, it was just a complete notion. Now, Pitt, we've been waiting for Pitt to start dominating, and that's where they laid it all on the line. They dominated on that national scale. You mentioned the interceptions from record 3 being taken back to the house. I think it was more of a shock and awe moment. Jackson Meeks really wasn't heavily involved. Gadsden Jr., the second wasn't there. Like the defense wasn't playing at a high level. That was a loss you see for a growing program who's trying to get themselves organized where, you know what, sometimes you're going to have a bad day where everything goes wrong. We have it in life. We have it in football. And sometimes you just flush the film. I think in this case, Fran Brown, you go through play by play and use it as a teachable moment. The way that he talked to his players after that loss, you sort of see in some situations where he grabbed the guy by the helmet, not in a violent way, but sort of put his hands around him, spoke to him, eye to eye, man to man, and then hugged him after the play and said, "I got your back." You're going to have bad nights. You can let that team sort of lose its momentum, lose their confidence, and sort of fail. Or you say, "Hey guys, look, life's going to happen like this. Football's going to happen like this. You're not as bad as you think you are. We're not as great as we think we are, but we're not as bad as we think we are. We're a better football team. We had a bad night. We played a very good football team. This is a chance for us to rebound at home versus another good football team, Virginia Tech." How do you respond as a squad? Where's your fortitude at? Where's your charisma? Where's your character? Where's your work ethic and practice up to this game? This is a very important game for the culture of that Syracuse football program and Fran Brown is trying to build. Coming from, was under Kirby there for the past couple of years in Georgia, has that mentality to coach all across the country, has a great pedigree to recruit, but now it's turning that recruiting, either to the transfer portal or developing kids, into action on the field. This week, you come off an embarrassing loss, everything goes wrong. I'm actually excited to see what they do on the field. In an early kick, it's a new kick, and we see new kicks always kind of shake up with the road teams who are the favorite teams coming in. How do they get up early? How do they get ready to play on the road? McCord, I think, is going to bounce back into a much better game. I expect Jackson Meeks, 43 receptions, 512 yards, and 4 touchdowns. It's a transfer from Georgia, making some plays as leading receiver there. Aronde Gadsden, the second, the tight end, 35 receptions, 466, and 3 touchdowns. How does this offense for Syracuse attack the Virginia Tech defense? Very similar to what Miami did. Get vertical in the passing game, challenge that Virginia Tech secondary, and get the ball out quick, avoiding that pass rush, because they obviously, Virginia Tech have one of the best pass rushes in the nation. You got to get quick throws out there in the flat, and do not let your tackles get absolved and destroyed and swept past by that pass rush from the Hokies. If they can get that going, that secondary for the defense, play a little better, keeps them in the football game, maybe get a ball bounce your way, but making it an exciting affair. Virginia Tech, if you want to stay relevant, you want to keep building momentum, you got to do exactly what I just said for Syracuse. This is a momentum, shifting, building toward the end of the year. Keep being fundamentally sound. Drones, don't let the moat be too big. Find your receivers, use their mobility. I think there's still a little more talent on the Virginia Tech squad across the board. I think they're able to go up and get a close win. They are not going to blow out Syracuse. This is going to be a battle through the fourth quarter. The Hokies will survive Syracuse, New York, but it'll be a lot closer than what most people kind of expect after last week's loss for Syracuse.
Going to the Dome is difficult, man. Going to Syracuse, especially this time of the year, I feel like we always see this where a team comes in, they may be the favorite, they may be a rated team. It used to be Clemson for years, struggled mightily going into Syracuse, New York. And I kind of wonder if this is setting up for Virginia Tech to be that team this year. The interesting thing with Virginia Tech, it's going to come down to whether or not Syracuse can block that pass rush that you were talking about. You take a look at what the kid Powell Ryland is doing. 11 sacks on the year. He's got 25 sacks on his career. The team as a whole has gotten to the quarterback 26 times. They're averaging almost 4 sacks a game. That means this Virginia Tech defense is going to get a decent pass rush. They're going to get after you. They're going to be able to get after you, run the football, kind of play ball control, clock management here. The question for me is going to come down Kyle McCord. Yeah, 5 interception game. Everyone's going to get on him. He's going to be critical on this one. I've seen it before. I watched Kyle McCord all last year, and you got to take the bad with the good. Like Kyle McCord's the type of kid that will go out and complete 15 of 15 passes for 284 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he'll just be on fire. Will just have the hot hand. And then next thing you know, the dude threw 3 interceptions in his next 6 throws. One of them goes to the house. Kyle McCord's a streaky quarterback. A lot of talent there. He's very, very good, but he's streaky at times. He also has taken 15 sacks. This is what concerns me. Because Syracuse is so reliant on the passing game, they're never going to be out of a football game, but they also can kind of throw it away and give Virginia Tech more opportunities than what you'd want to do. With this rushing attack, especially with Tootin over there, 12 touchdowns on the year. He's about ready to clear the 1,000-yard mark for them. Drones is that dual threat quarterback right there. You take a look at him. He's got 6 rushing scores on the year. This game is going to be a pure win the game in the trenches mentality. It's going to come down whether or not Syracuse can protect McCord, whether or not the defensive line can get a stop against Virginia Tech. For me, Fresh, I look at this and go, Virginia Tech won 6 games in the regular season. They won 7 games last year, including the bowl game. Saturday afternoon, Virginia Tech becomes bowl eligible. They're going to win this game by a field goal. I kind of am liking Syracuse in the points there because of how difficult it is to go into Syracuse and play, and the fact that I feel like Syracuse is never out of it. I could see Syracuse bouncing back, though, and blowing out Virginia Tech. But you know what? I've been waiting for this moment for the Hokies to come back and to be the Virginia Tech. They're one of the fan bases that I want us to be talking about. I want to be talking about Blacksburg, Virginia. So, hey, give me the Hokies, even though I got this weird feeling in my stomach that Syracuse is going to win this one.
And I think if they do that, then that just shows that Fran Brown has the mindset of that entire team locked in. Like, everyone's paying attention to what's being sold. They're focused in practice. And that they took that as an educational, teachable moment after that bad loss at Pitt.
Right. Hey, Fresh, let's stay in the ACC for our second game here. The Duke Blue Devils coming off a gutsy overtime loss. And I got to give him credit, Mario Cristobal credit. Going for 2 in overtime. Hey, you play to win. I like it.
Yeah, Manny Diaz, good job there.
Or Manny Diaz, sorry, not Cristobal. Manny Diaz, he replaced Cristobal. Duke is going in. They're 6-2 on the year, 2-2 in the conference. Miami is up to number 5 in the AP. I'm interested to see where they put Miami in the first college football playoff rating here. Miami's 8-0, 4-0 in the conference right now. Miami is a 21.5-point home favorite. Over-under is set at 54.5. Fresh, I think Miami's winning this football game, but 21.5, do you have any faith in Miami covering that spread?
No, zero faith. I mean, I put money on Miami to cover 21 versus Florida State. Early on, it was looking pretty bad. Then, they got a couple late scores in the fourth quarter. It was a rivalry game. The receiver pass to Ward for the touchdown there. I don't expect it to come out that much juice. They played with fire all year long. And this is becoming a trend with Miami. That defense is underperforming. The offense is just slow start. They slow started versus Virginia Tech. They slow started versus Cal. They slow started versus Florida State. They're just, the final score looks great, but if you watch it, it's not watchable elite football, if that makes any sense. It's just, they're beating up on, surviving or beating up bad teams. They're getting a couple calls late. They didn't look fantastic defensively versus Louisville. That was a back and forth offensive juggernaut, touchdown after touchdown at one point. It continues to keep just going the same way where we're not getting a 42-10, just absolute from start to finish drubbing, or a 35-10 where from the very beginning, it's outright dominance. These games are close. These games are battles. If Florida State even had a quarterback, they might get a score late and not turn the ball over, and Miami doesn't cover. So it's just it had a bad vibe where they've not just played elite football, and it kind of worries me going forward if they start playing a Penn State, a Georgia, an A&M, an Ohio State, an Oregon. How is this Miami team actually going to respond? Because right now they're sort of getting by with a chin. Where's that effort to sort of, at least give me one game where they look dominant from start to finish? On their side, Manny Diaz with Duke coming back to Miami. You're coming off of a gut-wrenching home loss. Murphy and that tired squad played really well. They scored. They kept up with SMU, and they actually defensively shut down and contained that SMU offense that had been playing so high under Rhett Lashley. We talked about it in the previous one with Syracuse. and that coming off a bad loss. I'm going to ask you this question right now. Would you rather get blown out where you just basically like flush it, I'm going on to the next game, or be at home in a race for the ACC title spot, playing for the title game, and you lose in a gut-wrenching perspective in overtime to SMU? Yeah, you went for two and didn't get it, but you had it so close right there. And how do you feel like how do you pick yourself up and go back into the next game and get ready?
Short term, I would rather be blown out because I can move past a blowout with short term. I think short term, though, when you take a look at long term, and again, I think about building a program, building a culture there, and saying, this is the culture we're going to play to win when we're close in a ball game. I think that goes a long way with kids, especially when you start recruiting kids. And when you're at a place like Duke, that, yeah, you can get anyone you want for basketball, but not the case for football. Although Malachi Murphy, he's looked great.
He's looked really good. We're going to get another great 2-quarterback matchup. Does the Duke supporting cast continue to keep, arriving? Does that offensive line keep playing at a high level? Because right now they've been able to move the ball and play really well against everyone they face. And then defensively, assignment in football, do not break contain on Cam Ward. Keep Restrepo under wraps. He's going to get his catches. You're not going to stop that. And then Martinez, sort of just limit him. He hasn't been as explosive as he was at Oregon State. Keep him contained. Tackle, bend but don't break, and you have a chance of escaping, with a dub. Now, folks, it's not the 80s and it's not the 90s, early 2000s in the old Orange Bowl down there in Miami. This is Miami Gardens, Hard Rock Stadium. It is not exactly a home environment for the Hurricanes. Duke, you're not going to a hostile environment. Just treat this as a business trip. Focus on it. It's not going to be inhospitable. You'll probably be able to communicate, take care of your business, and move forward. I think Miami wins money line, but take Duke in the points. The 21.5, and that team is going to keep them really locked in and focused. I think Miami wins by like 14-17, maybe like a late field goal, 14, somewhere in there, but they are not covering that 21.5.
Malik Murphy, not Malachi Murphy, but Malik Murphy really played two different halves of football last week versus SMU. Take a look what he did in the first half. He looked okay. He just wasn't himself. And then all of a sudden, he kind of leads Duke on this charge that pushes that game into overtime. The impressive thing is that the kid has done it with his arm, not his legs. Everyone's going to look at Murphy and say, oh, well, he's a dual threat quarterback. No, the kid's not. Sits in the pocket, wants to throw the ball all around. This game, though, is not going to be about the quarterbacks. Duke has one of the softest run defenses in the entire ACC. And yeah, the ACC is not well known for having like elite level crazy defenses from top to bottom. Okay. Duke's defense, where their strength is in the passing game. So Miami, this is the perfect time for you to work on your run game. Duke is not a great run defense. You kind of use Cam Ward's ability to kind of scramble, move the pocket as well. He can take off, get Fletcher, Martinez, Lyle, all of those guys, all those running backs going, get them enough touches in this game where you do have to force Duke to put an 7th, 8th guy into that box and open up those passing lanes for Cam Ward. I honestly think Miami would play into Duke's hands if they go, we got to get Cam Ward the Heisman. Like, Eshon Genty is already running away with the Heisman, both literally and figuratively. We got to get Cam Ward more style points. We got to get him more stats. And I think if you do that, you actually play into Duke's hands. You play into what Duke does well on the defensive side of the football, and you wind up putting yourself in a bad situation. Conventional wisdom says line it up, run it down their throat, control the clock, and you wind up walking out of here. You're going to wind up with a big-time win in this game. The only thing that would really, really hurt the Hurricanes in this is if they can't get after Cam Ward. Or I'm sorry, Murphy there. If they can get after him, just like I said with Virginia Tech leads the ACC with 26 sacks. They're tied for that lead with the Hurricanes. If the Hurricanes are able to get after Murphy, taking 9 sacks on the season, Duke is able to protect him. Okay, I'm a little bit nervous for the Hurricanes. Hurricanes got the best offense in the ACC, but they got to kind of change their identity for this week and this week only. If they run the ball, if they force Duke to bring that extra man into the box, give me Miami and the points. If you tell me Cam Ward's going to throw the ball 35 times in this game, I'll take Duke and the points on that part.
Seth, are you worried about the lack of a dominant win from Miami? Like they've just sort of squeaked by and basically been playing with their food for the past few weeks.
What do you mean by worried?
I'm not worried like ACC title game implications. Are they truly ready to take on that challenge, or going national and playing, like I mentioned earlier, a Penn State, an Ohio State, a Georgia, an Oregon, a Texas, an A&M or LSU, or an Iowa State, a Kansas State, a BYU? Are they ready to handle a more national, high, more profile, more successful teams, as opposed to just rolling through an ACC and getting by barely?
I go back and forth on them. I want to see them against a team like SMU, Pitt, Clemson. I do want us to have a good measuring stick for them. Yes, I am concerned about that because we don't have a great measuring stick. What's their best win this season? The win over Florida week 1. Okay, maybe. No. Virginia Tech, them being Virginia Tech on a ref call there? No. Them going out and losing the first half to Cal and having to pull this miraculous comeback to win that game. What do you consider their signature win right now? I mean, again, we got to put some respect on their name because at the end of the day, they've won all their games, and that's what you're supposed to do.
I will say I think Louisville's probably the best win, but the fortitude in the second half and not to give up and find ways to survive and keep advancing, I think that's a positive going forward because they've actually had to play full 4-quarter games a lot. So they've had to be locked in late down the stretch of, 2-minute warning and 2-minute drill, and all the kind of, high pressure situations. But we haven't seen that start to finish where you're not going to probably, how can you keep playing that dangerous game?
Yeah. The question I kind of asked with them is, can they afford a loss? Can they still make the field of 12 and can they lose a regular season game? I think if it's Clemson versus Miami in the title game with an undefeated Miami and a one-loss Clemson, I think both are in regardless.
Yeah, I think that's both in at that point. If it's a one-loss Miami already and a one-loss Clemson, you start looking at the landscape and going resume to resume.
Right. Now, the question I would say is you have a title game and you have 2 one-loss teams in the ACC title game. Are both teams in then? And that's where you kind of – that's my judge on Miami.
Miami would have one loss in the league. Like that would be – that's where the committee has a larger scope. You start looking at resumes and Power 5, legit wins, quad one for a basketball term, quad one wins, who's a bad loss, whatever.
Right. I think what we guys start judging on teams, quality wins are any team that probably is bowl eligible in my eyes. If you won over half your games –
bowl eligible, I think it adds a quality win because that ranked at time of game. There's teams from September. Like no. Georgia Tech has a ranked win because they beat Florida State when they were ranked in week 0.
No, and the AP is crap anyway, so it's
So I think it's sort of looking at maybe bad losses or good losses. Like Clemson right now has a loss to Georgia. They played a tight in the first half. They got thumped in the second half, and they've looked dominant ever since. So that actually is helping them. It's not like they've lost to Northern Illinois like Notre Dame did in that will-not situation.
Yeah. I wish we had time for me to victory lap Missouri right now, but somehow Missouri's still ranked 25th.
MIZ 000.
Yeah. Z put me to sleep watching them. All right, Fresh. Let's go to the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. It's here in Jacksonville, Florida. We're here recording out of Jacksonville. We're talking about the Florida Gators. They're going to be facing off against the Georgia Bulldogs. It's the annual game here in Jacksonville. Right now, Florida, they're 4-3 on the season. They've moved over to DJ Lagway, kind of this weird 2-quarterback system, but when you have 2 quarterbacks, you really don't have any quarterback. Georgia, 6-1. They are They're one loss in the SEC right now. They're 4-1 in the conference. At time of record, the spread is currently Georgia by 16.5. Over-under is set at 52.5. Fresh, we both have been to this football game. It's an exciting time. It's a fun time. If you haven't ever been there, it needs to be on your bucket list of games to attend. It's always enjoyable. But the real question is, what's going on in Florida? What's up with Billy Napier? We kind of go back and forth. Like, how hot is the seat? Is it cooling down because they've looked better because he just went to DJ Lagway? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they've actually looked a little more competitive lately. It's not perfect. In Mertz going out for the year, you kind of lost that stability at quarterback who was actually helping propel that offense to be a little more efficient. Lagway right now, he's had some great throws. I don't want to say great. He's had some good throws. And he's had some typical freshman head-scratching throws where you're like, deer in headlights. It happens, boom. It's a welcome to the league, if you will, moment. But I got to give Billy Napier credit. At least they kept the ship afloat. This thing could have fallen apart even worse, especially after getting whooped up by A&M, the Miami loss. Things could have really started spiraling out of control. The team showed up, beat Mississippi State, and they beat Kentucky. They competed versus Tennessee. They should have won that game, but at least they have not laid down flat. And I think that is a positive sign if you're a Gator fan coming to this ball game. Looking at, Elijah Badger at wide receiver, Jaden Bott, running back, sort of emerging there. Montrell Johnson, obviously. You've gotten guys opportunities. You've got to play the young guys now, get them involved, and see who's ready to step up and take to the next, to the next level of your abilities. Offensive line are still an issue. The defensive line for Florida still an issue. The secondary has shown, Marshall's been okay. They've shown some plays. Linebackers have been okay. They're not the Gators we've seen in the past where they were elite in the early, 90s, early 2000s. This is a different kind of program, but there is talent in the roster. They recruit some players. But what does Billy Napier do in this ballgame? This kind of feels like you're still searching for that signature win in the Napier era. You've got to pull out all the stops. Rivalry games, I know it's just cliche, throw out the record books, but anything can happen. Crazy things have happened. I've seen a Publix bag boy, fifth string walk on, holder take a fake field goal for a touchdown, in a win. Things happen in rivalry games because people have nothing to lose. Florida literally has nothing to lose. Look at the rest of their schedule. They got Georgia, they got Texas, they got LSU coming up. Florida State's a guaranteed dub down the stretch. But this is that back end of the schedule we were talking about for months leading up to this season where they have nothing to lose. They're going to pull out stops and try to pull up an upset and ruin someone's season. So does Lagway get a little reckless? Do they start taking some chances offensively, some more trick plays? Does the defense start blitzing more? Early in the football game, I expect the Gators to fight a lot. It's when you break that will. Does Georgia break it early with a couple early touchdowns to let the Gators hang around, make a couple plays, give them momentum? Just like being on the road in a hostile environment. Look at Alabama going to Vanderbilt. They didn't take Vanderbilt seriously. They played with their food, and Vanderbilt eventually got after them, got a couple of turnovers, hit them late, wore them down, and they were there in the end. And they won the football game. That's how upsets happen. That's what you have to do if you're Florida. Fight early, get after it, tackle, hit them hard, hit some trick plays, hit some, be unorthodox. You have nothing that's going to hold you back. There's no expectations. Everybody expects you to get whooped up by 20 plus. Come out there and let it loose. Billy Napier, if you play, you're famous for saying scared money don't make no money. You already showed you were scared by not going for two up in Rocky Top that would have potentially won the ball game, and you tried to just wait it out and play for overtime. If you really want to live by that moniker, scared money don't make no money, you've got to go ahead and play a little reckless this week and next week versus Texas. You got to just let it all out, empty the playbook, be aggressive because right now the fans are even expecting you to get whooped up. Young players, if you're a Florida fan and you're a Florida player, you got to go out there and just take care of business. And if you show any ounce of intimidation to the dogs are going to take you out. You just got to come in there, play football. It's still a game, and get after it. Now, with that said, I'm a die-hard Bulldog fan. I'm Bulldog to the core. I live by the fat mentality. Florida, Auburn, Tennessee is my triarchy order of hatred. Um, Growing up in Florida, suffering through the 90s when this team was dominant, having Urban drop a whole heck of a three-time match at the end of the ball game. This is a game that I dread. I've seen Florida dominate. I've seen the Dogs win big. I've seen gut-wrenching close games all across the board. This is a game where the Dogs coming in, you have a lot in front of you. You need to build up the momentum from that Texas game. Offense has to become a little more efficient consistently. We've seen flashes of greatness. We've seen flashes of mediocrity. Get better in the passing game, get better in the running game. Tate Ratledge should be back for the Dogs. And the defense, keep that momentum from the Texas game, getting after Lagway. You have to hit them early. Do not let the Gators settle in. If the Gators settle in, you're going to have a fight on your hands. If you get after them early and you hit them in the mouth, get a couple touchdowns, you break their will, the game is over. You have to be aggressive and keep stacking that momentum from the Texas game in this environment. If not, it is a 50-50 split. I got a feeling it's more of like a 65-35, 60-40 in favor of the Dogs, so you will have more of a home crowd advantage. But you can't let people hang around. You've got to take out the Gators early and often, punish them, and eventually make them quit. This is obviously it's a fun event. It's amazing. It's an awesome time. I will be in the building. Just come in there, take care of business, get your dub, move on to the next game if you're a Georgia football mentality. Do not take a playoff. Build stack wins, stack plays, stack victories. Go out there. Kirby hates the Gators. It's a downright passion. He hates the Gators, and he will not let them take the foot off the gas. But you have to make sure you get him early to break the will. In the end, I think Dogs cover the spread. It'll be aggressive in the first quarter, close game in the first quarter, and over time, Georgia will run the ball a lot more and end up eking out and getting the W taken care of the second half.
Fresh, we are closing into Rich Rod, Brady Hoke level rivalry between the Florida Gators and the Georgia Bulldogs. And I'm going to say this is for years I've heard the cliches, and guys, if you listen to this long enough, you know how much I hate cliches. Now, I hate the words next man up. I hate the whole thing about throw the records out. I get it. Weird things happen in rivalry games. And I take us all the way back to 2009, or actually 2007, when Lloyd Carr left the University of Michigan. And they hired a hotshot head coach, Rich Rodriguez, who had put on a great performance over at West Virginia. And he took over Michigan. And all of a sudden, Ohio State just winds up taking Michigan every single year to the woodshed, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And Michigan only beats Ohio State the 1 year where Jim Tressel gets fired. They lose half their team, their starting team, and then Luke Fickell, a very, very young, inexperienced Luke Fickell, has to try to navigate through that, and they barely won that football game. And then every year after that, it just got worse and worse and worse. In the last 7 years, Georgia is 6-1 against Florida. That one loss is 2020 in the COVID season, which, again, let's throw the COVID season out because that was a crazy time anyways. On top of that,
first string quarterback.
Right. And down to that, the closest this game has been is 7 points. Like Georgia, that's in the last 7 years, the closest Florida has gotten to Georgia is within 7 points. Every other game has been a double-digit loss there. Remove the 2020 result there, because I'm not going to count that. If Billy Napier wants to make a name, if the Florida Gators want to make their name, this game has got to at least be competitive into the fourth quarter. I'm not saying you have to win the football game. I really give Florida like a 3% snowball's chance in hell. And again, we're in the state of Florida for winning this football game. I don't think Florida's going to do it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe Billy Napier has unlocked the secrets with DJ Lagway, and the Florida Gators are going to do this. I don't see it happening. But if you want to move forward, if you want to say that you're not falling into the abyss, and the Florida Gators are getting very close to falling into the program level of abyss, because you've gone, since Urban Meyer left, you've gone through 4 or 5 coaches. I've lost track here. You're about ready to go through another one. And guess what? Urban's not coming back. Who are you going to hire that's going to change this program? You live in the state of Florida. You're a recruiting hotbed. You can throw a quarter and hit one of the great 5-star prospects in the state, and you can't put together a competitive team. I like Billy Napier. I think he's a good guy. I don't really care for the Florida Gators, but I've listened to Billy Napier talk quite a few times. I think he's a halfway decent person. I don't wish any ill will or harm to the dude. I don't think he's like some shady used car salesman type of guy. I do think he's in over his head. I think he's probably a pretty good football coach at a middle D1 school. I could see this guy being a great football coach at Texas Tech. I think he could lead Texas Tech to 8-9 wins.
Out of the spotlight.
Right. But if you really want us to take you serious, Billy Napier, like I said, you got to keep the Florida Gators in this game all the way up until the fourth quarter. Now, Georgia. Let me talk to you here on this one for a second, Georgia. I'm waiting to see a normal Kirby Smart Georgia Bulldog team outside of the Texas game for 4 quarters. Here's where I'm going to draw a line here. Georgia right now, first things first, your pass rush. You've played 7 games. You got 18 sacks on the season. That's not the right level. That is not Kirby Smart defense. That's not to the level that I have an expectation for. Second point I'm going to make. Your turnover margin right now is 0. You haven't, the amount of giveaways you have is equal to the amount of takeaways. Again, not a Kirby Smart Georgia team. Yes, the Texas win, fantastic. You went into Texas, you beat them down, you took control of that game for 4 quarters. Wonderful thing to see. You got up for that game. You've had a week off. You've had time to prepare for this football game. I don't think you're going to take Florida lightly, but what we need to see is a continuation of the Texas game. You're great. You played well against Alabama in the second half. You lost that football game, but then you kind of were like stuck in the mud. You didn't come out and show it. There's been too much this year where I've seen it be a weak first half, and then all of a sudden you got to play like this Superman level in the second half. The only time we haven't really seen that is kind of Clemson a little bit, but even Clemson was a little bit rough in the first half, and then the second, and then the Texas game. 2 marquee games in the year. When the eyes are on you, you should come up and show out and play. I need to see that from Georgia. I really do, because at the same time, too, I'm starting to see that from other teams. I'm starting to see that where I have questions on you. Heck, I even have questions about my own team. I have a laundry list of questions that I have problems with. But if we're starting to go to the contender level, I need to see a winning the turnover margin. DJ Lagway's jersey winds up dirty 4 or 5 times in this football game. That happens. Okay, cool. Good to go. Starting to play your better half of the football in the second half of the season. That's exactly what you should be doing. That's my concern for Georgia. I got Georgia win this by 3 touchdowns. Georgia wins this by 3 touchdowns.
It's going to be an interesting game, though. We both talked about Carson Beck, where we need to see a clean game, an efficient game. He's from Jacksonville, won the state title at Mandarin High School here in town, playing in the stadium. This is his last chance. He needs to go out there and put up a clean game and lead and start showing that what we expected to see this year coming into year 2 in Bobo's offense of getting the ball down the field, hitting receivers, being clean with the football, receivers being on the same page. Part of that's also going to be ETN, Gator transfer, now a Dog. He might have said something about, one program is different than the other. People in the public, people in the media, and that sort of thing, social media. How does he live up and hold up to those comments? And how does the Gator defense, who obviously heard those comments and saw those comments, react? Do they show up and try to get after him? Or does he show up and maybe it's like prove him right that, hey, I said what I said, deal with it. So it's going to be a challenge for ATN You made comments. You moved from Florida to Georgia. Now you got to back that move up and back up your comments that you made. Whether people assume they're true or not, you still got to play the game between the white lines. I expect Nate Frazier to also be heavily involved. But you mentioned the death march. That's Kirby Smart's offense is sometimes you got to scale back, run the football, be physical at the line of scrimmage, and just drive the ball down the throat. Just literally take the will from the Gator defense. If that is what comes down to making a better passing attack by running the football and getting that back in balance, I expect to see that on Saturday.
Yeah. We'll see on this. We're going to learn a lot about both coaches here, because I think both coaches might be trending completely opposite directions by the end of this football game. But Florida, you got to keep it close at least to the fourth quarter. If you do that, then I'll give you some credit there. I don't expect you to win, but I'll give you your props if you can keep it competitive up until the fourth quarter. I'll give you props on that. All right, Fresh, let's go to a low-key, really great game over in the ACC. The Pitt Panthers, they're 7-0 on the season, 3-0 in the conference. They're undefeated, and I don't think a lot of people are talking about them because they're just kind of flying underneath the radar. Everyone is talking about SMU. They're 7-1, 4-0 in the conference. This game is going to be played in Dallas, where SMU is a different team in their home state. They're 7.5-point favorite in this game. Over-under is set right now at 58.5. Fresh, I watched a lot of that Duke-SMU game. Why? Because I have this weird obsession with SMU this year that I'm just fascinated by them. I don't know. Is this? I don't see 7.5 points, but are we looking at Pitt kind of marching towards maybe a possibility of the ACC title berth, or is this SMU's next kind of victim?
Well, we think we talked about whether there's kind of an Armageddon chaos in the ACC, forming up with if SMU, if the winner of this game stays, undefeated in the ACC, if Clemson goes to the ACC and Miami goes to the ACC, you got three teams and they haven't played each other. Who are the two that actually get in? There's obviously tiebreakers that come into play out, for that, but it was something that we were looking at a couple weeks ago. What's forming? Who's actually going to be playing someone down the stretch to calculate this out? And this was the first match that really popped. Pitt, I think, has been a nice story. Pat Narduzzi, hardcore defense, nasty. Even though obviously a couple of years ago, Jordan Addison and Kenny Pickett there and put on some serious points, but no one ever thought, even with Dan Marino at quarterback and Tony Dorsett back in the day, Larry Fitzgerald, we always kind of look at it's Pitt. It's not the image doesn't match the product on the field. The product of the field, the legendary players offensively are pretty solid, pretty great. But we always feel like Pitt is just Pittsburgh to a T. Defense, hard nosed, rugged, lunch pail, blue collar, grind it out and get dubs. Not the entire case. This team is fun. This team is exciting. They are scoring points. Now, ESPN did a great job about it. You might look it up if you have a chance. They interviewed Pat Narduzzi about his off-season focus and why he went out and got Cade Bell. Now, I have an affinity to Cade Bell. His dad, Kerwin Bell, was the head coach at Jacksonville University here in Florida. I worked at the JU Athletic Department, director of marketing. So I became very, very close with them. And I actually was the color commentator on the radio broadcast for the football team my final year there when Cade was the quarterback. Cade and Kerwin, if you're a Gator fan, you know about Kerwin Bell. If you look him up on YouTube, there's a pretty couple of funny videos from the CFL times. But the Duke could throw the football at Florida in the Charlie Pell days of the 80s. They threw the ball all around the ball, and that's what Kerwin brought to this landscape and taught his son to do. They will put up yards. They're going to push the defense up and down very, very fast. Every 12 to 15 seconds, they're snapping the ball. And they try to get aggressive in layers down the field to pass the game. But the pass game becomes a weapon because they are so successful at blending in the running game. It is a offense that Cade learned from his dad. His dad take it from NFL landscapes, took it from the CFL, take it from college, and he's blended it up. And that right there is challenging every layer of the defense. And that new wrinkle to Pitt football this year, along with Eli Holstein coming over from Alabama, has allowed them to really, I think maybe even get there quicker than we expected. I think they probably figured maybe next year they really see this offense flourishing, but the way that they can make the easy throws, every player's an option in the passing attack that Cade Bell's offense is bringing, it puts the defense on their heels. So SMU and Pitt, offensive mindsets are very similar from a running attack and a passing attack, where every inch of that grass is now open game for moving the ball. So I think we're going to see tons of points. I think we're going to see very fast paced. We're going to see tons of possessions. And the game actually might take 4+ hours, because if you're getting a snap off every 10 to 12 seconds, incomplete passes, getting out late in the second half, late parts of the half of going out of bounds, you're going to see tons of plays, yards. The game's going to take forever. Buckle in, get yourself squared away at home. But it's going to be one of those, just turnovers. Turnover of the philosophy. We're seeing two fast-paced offenses. Cade Bell's done a great job with this offense, bringing them and getting them on the page right off the bat. You look at his running back, Desmond Reed, 89 carries, 541 yards, and 3 touchdowns. As both these passing attacks are the highlight, both these running backs are very heavily involved. Because on the other side, SMU, Rashard Smith, 117 carries, 745, and 9 touchdowns. You start thinking too much of, I'm going to get burnt deep. You start dropping a little more cover 3, cover 4, putting a more of an umbrella scheme. And the running game is there because they're allowing you to run the football. They're putting 3 or maybe 5, 6 guys in the box. The holes are there. And offensive coordinators on both sides are able to attack that. And also the quarterbacks have the knowledge you don't have to do it all by yourself. If you can run the ball, it's going to draw them up. The pass game then pushes them back. You kind of work that back and forth and always keep the defense on their heels. And that's why this team's going to be extremely exciting, even from a watchability standpoint. You look at SMU, we initially thought, we talked about earlier, Stone at quarterback coming into the year. We thought he was going to be, high flying, building off of last year. He really struggled. And then Jennings came out off the bench, and he's taken this team to a different level. I don't even think Rhett Lashley expected Jennings to be this successful compared to what he had Stone off last year. So both these teams are, I think, overachieving a little bit, and really taking advantage of the ACC and low expectations for them when they came into the year. A lot of players getting opportunities, whether the transfer portal or from the development, and it's been really cool to see. This game is going to be a full 60-minute fight. Both these teams have scored 30-plus points in 4 of their last 5, and SMU actually scored 28 in their overtime win. So we're going to see explosive action. We're going to see that 60. That over is going to get hit in a heartbeat. And I don't know. I'm going to take Pitt in the points. I do have an affinity for Cade, obviously. And then J.J. Lassiter was a running back at JU, was there. So I've known him for a while. He's on staff with Pitt. I'm going to go Pitt in the points. Make it a fun one. And if they get that dub, they'll finally start getting the national respect. This is going to be a fun one to watch. Don't miss it all.
Right. It's interesting because SMU needs this game. SMU really needs this game because if they can get past Pitt, the remainder of their schedule is much easier down the stretch. Now, is it perfect? No. But it's easier. It's a lot easier than what Pitt still has to navigate through. This is the first time, think about this. SMU has not been in Dallas at Gerald F. Ford Field since the end of September. They didn't play a single home game in the month of October. They've been a road warrior team. They've done well. I think that's kind of what we saw against Duke. They saw a team that has been living out of suitcases. They've been living on the road. And now they get to go home. They end their schedule. 3 of their next 4. All those games are in Dallas. They got to go to Virginia still there as well. I'm intrigued because if SMU wins this football game, where does the committee, when they first put out their initial ranking, where does the committee put them? The AP voters, they're putting them at number 20. That's kind of disrespectful in my eyes because you take a look, they've done pretty much everything. Their one loss is a 3-point loss to a very good BYU team, a team that BYU is undefeated right now. If they lose to Pitt, yeah, the wheels are coming off. They're not going to be ranked highly in this. They're going to kind of drop back into the pack. But you take a look, you see what they've done this year, and you just can only kind of wonder. As for the Panthers, this is stage 1 of stage 2. If they win this football game, if Pitt wins on Saturday, they have Clemson still on their schedule. Clemson's, like you said earlier, Fresh, Clemson's undefeated in ACC play. that game gets a whole lot of rub because all of a sudden that game becomes kind of like a playing game to get into the ACC title game. If Pitt were to be able to knock off Clemson as well, which that is a really intriguing question, but if Pitt was able to do that, I honestly think Pitt's got some really good wins on their schedule. They have the SMU win. They have the win against Clemson. Oh, throw on top of that the win against West Virginia. They have a nice – they blew out Syracuse. They beat Cincinnati. That Cincinnati is looking a little bit better here as well. It really starts to – they end the season on the road with Louisville and Boston College back-to-back. Those aren't gimme wins, but they've earned enough credit with me that I would kind of pick them to be favored in those games. So many intriguing storylines in this game. That's what I want to know. I want answers to our questions going into the month of November, being able to say, okay, we need to look at the Pitt Panthers in this type of lens. We need to look at SMU in this type of lens, because that's what's going to come down to when we start having our debates about what the committee is going to do, whether or not they're getting it right, whether or not getting it wrong. There's this weird world too that I think that SMU could win this football game, and then Pitt goes to plays Clemson and knocks off Clemson this month, and then all of a sudden we're back to the craziness that we were talking about a while ago, where SMU's got one loss in the conference, Pitt's got one loss, and Clemson's got one loss, and it's like this weird. Oh well, SMU wouldn't have a loss. I'm sorry, but it's this weird thing. What do we view the ACC in? And again, I need to see a little
worst case scenario.
It is. And I was a little bit nervous with Kevin Jennings last week against Duke. When you're a running quarterback, we've seen it in the NFL with Tua, we've seen it with other quarterbacks. Kid, slide, get out of bounds. He started taking some hits where I get nervous. I get nervous for the kid on that one, because he's not like this huge big body kid. He's not 6'4", 225 type of like sturdy durability. Getting 6 foot 189. Those hits rack up. That gets me nervous, because if he goes down, SMU's season is kind of cooked.
Yeah, you have to manage the expectations and keep him, maybe control him, coach him up a little bit. Hey, slide. Use the sideline. You don't always have to keep going for the extra yard. Not to really go down too tangent, but looking at what Tua did, his most recent concussion, he could have slid, but he chose to put his head down and go forward and got himself hurt.
Right.
You've got to be protected from yourself, because in the end, everybody's competitive. You know, if you're playing right now at a high D1 level, you're an alpha and you're very competitive. And you're going to give everything you can for your teammates to make the play, to go forward. Sometimes you need that coach or that teammate's like, hey, look, you got the yards, slide, protect yourself. We need you for the next play, the next play, the next play, and the next game. One play is great, but don't risk it for the greater good, the bigger picture, where the body is more important and the team's success down the road is more important than that 1 or 2, 3 yards. It's okay to slide. Be comfortable with it. You will grow and get better. We'll get one play and can move forward from that.
Right. And this game, unfortunately, is on 8 p.m. on the ACC network, man. Like, ESPN do better. You got Louisville at Clemson. Like, I want to see Pitt SMU. Do better, ESPN.
ACC network probably had the bid on that one. I mean, there's games on Big Ten network. Sometimes the conference network wants to bid on it, and it just depends on, not as many people get the ACC network, so you're going to probably stream that one.
Yeah. I like what you said, though, Fresh. Give me Pitt and the points.
Pitt and the points. I like that. That's
Pitt and the points. Yeah. All right, Fresh. Let's go to our top 5 matchup this weekend. It's a big one. It's in Happy Valley. The Ohio State Buckeyes, they're 6-1 on the season, 3-1 in the conference. They're traveling to Penn State. This is a noon kick on Fox. Penn State is 7-0, 4-0 in the conference. At time of recording, I thought this was interesting because this tells me a lot. Ohio State is a 3.5-point road favorite right now. Over-under is at 45.5 currently. I feel like that's a little bit on the lower side, but this may be a very low-scoring football game, depending on a lot of things. Fresh, with this one, I have a boatload of questions. I have a boatload of answers I want for it. But before I get on to my little tangent here, I'll turn it over to you. What you got for Ohio State traveling to Happy Valley?
Well, last week, they got really close to laying a dud.
Right.
I was watching the game, obviously, with some friends who are Ohio State fans, and they took the Buckeyes to cover, and they were not too happy. They hedged their bets later on. 28 was a 27.5 or 26.5. That was, or even 28.5 at one point. Like it was a high number. But number regardless of what they had to cover, they didn't look ready to play. I think at times you kind of felt early in that ball game where they figured, all right, Nebraska's just going to melt away. It's Nebraska. They got destroyed the week before by Indiana. Yeah. We'll outwill them. We're Ohio State. The name is going to mean something. And they just didn't have the extra juice after that loss to Oregon. Like you didn't see them come out and say, all right, we're going to thump them. A couple of years ago when Michigan State was highly ranked, they came into the shoe and the game was over by the end of the first quarter. It was 20-0. Where's that Ohio State attack? Like the ruthless, we're going to go and put you out of your misery right off the bat. I didn't expect them to come out that way versus Nebraska, but I expected a little more juice to get everybody going and get after it. Dylan Rail is not an amazing quarterback. They didn't make him look terrible. They didn't make him look great. He still was in the ballgame. They let Nebraska be a little more physical at times than they actually should have been. It was just a kind of a lackluster start. They survived. They got to the ball game. They're very fortunate. Every team so far this season has had one of those games where they just didn't look great and they survived. Texas the same way, Vanderbilt, Georgia, Kentucky. Like we're sort of seeing some of these games like they're getting through it, they're surviving, but there are a lot of question marks. The defense, they got ran on pretty well by Nebraska, and that kind of had me some worry. Like, where was the juice from that Buckeye defense? Where was the juice from the Buckeyes outside of Jeremiah Smith had his touchdown, that was great, but just they didn't feel like amped up and ready to get after it. They survived. I think it's a very good teachable moment. It's always good when even though Nick Saban said you learn more from a loss. I think, hey, they kind of made a wake-up call. Maybe they were looking ahead to Penn State. They're like, all right, Nebraska got slaughtered by Indiana. We're coming off the tight loss to Oregon. We got Penn State. We're going to look past them. They realize, oh, crap, we're in a ball game. They learned, they survived, they grow, and now they're here. I want to see this Penn State. I'll see this Ohio State team come in with a reckless abandon, a ruthless desire to destroy the Nittany Lions. You mentioned it earlier about how the Georgia-Florida game is no longer really a rivalry in the past 10 years. We're in the Lloyd Carr, Brady Hoke era. There's no real rivalry between Ohio State and Penn State, folks. James Franklin hadn't done anything. This is a game that Ohio State should come in, take care of business, get the top 5 win, assert yourself back in the top 4, punch your ticket basically to the playoff, and move forward. Do not let Penn State hang around, but it's James Franklin. You've owned this thing. You're Ohio State. Take that ownership, button up the things in the offensive line, defensive lines, and get after it and get the win and move forward. If Ohio State loses this game, I still think they're a playoff team because it's 2 top 5, top 6 overall losses, and both are on the road. Like you can't, unless they get blown out by 20 points, which I don't really think is going to happen to Penn State. I think they're still heavily in that top 8, top 9 playoff, ranking period. But it would be much better if Ohio State gets that back on the groove, goes in and takes care of business and gets it done. I think we're going to see a lot of Judkins and Henderson. They're going to run the ball and then hit Jeremiah Smith over the top. But run the football, help Will Howard out, keep him content. A little more maybe giving him the option as well. The ground game's always your friend, but if you have 3 backs going all day long, including Howard, that's eventually going to wear in that Penn State defense and get it done. Flipping the other side. Speaking of sleepwalking in the first half, Penn State slept walk in the first half. I know Drew Lover's a little beat up and hasn't, came with an injury in that ball game, but maybe the momentum in that first half, the environment they were in, they were not ready to play offensively. They kind of just drudged through it, and eventually they got going when they got the pick 6. They sort of flipped the switch for the Nittany Lions and took it over. Wisconsin, they put up a valiant effort. They got away from them late, but they showed up to play early. And then Penn State wore them down with the ground game. I want to see that again here. Challenge that Ohio State front seven. Run your running backs. You have the two of those guys there. Nicholson, um, uh, yeah. Just run the running backs from Penn State. Be who you are. Hit Warren for first downs. Julian Fleming, get him involved. Drew Allar, play with him in the moment if you're healthy enough to play. If Drew Allar's not healthy enough to play, I have some serious concerns for Penn State and actually expect them to run the ball a lot more. James Franklin, this is really your game. There's been games where we've been waiting for Penn State to win. Eventually, how do you get your team over the hump? You're not going to get gifted a Rose Bowl by finishing third in the Big Ten this year. You might get a playoff spot. But when are you going to get that signature win? When are you going to take out Ohio State? Get that big dub, supplant yourself. If you get this win, you punch your ticket basically to Indianapolis, getting ready to take out Oregon, and you really shake up the entire picture. Maybe it actually works in Ohio State's favor because they get that first game and they don't throw up playing the Big Ten title game. But get yourself there. Assert yourself and assert your dominance from a program standpoint. Is your defense ready to get after Will Howard? You're able to tackle that contact. And can your offense keep moving? Because you've actually seen growth in the offense this season from Penn State. Can they take that next step this week? And they continue to keep growing and moving forward. If Penn State shows up and uses the crowd, even though it's not at night, and gets a win, I'll start taking Penn State seriously. Right now, I think they're fraudville, and they're going to get exposed eventually down the road by somebody. If you have a chance to prove me wrong and prove everybody wrong and assert yourself as the top 4 team in the country by going and beating Ohio State and really putting Ryan Day, in some more inconvenient situations than he's already currently in. But James Franklin, this is on you to coach the full 60 and get your team ready to go. You had a slow start versus USC. You have a slow start versus Wisconsin. You cannot afford a slow start versus Ohio State. You've got to come out ready to go and get fired up and play a full 60, buckle up the chin strap. If it has to be old school Penn State, run the ball 4 yards in a cloud of dust and play defense and win the game 13-10, you do it. You just got to get the win. Finally get the win. If you don't, there's going to be a lot of questions raised about you. So both these coaches, this is a spotlight on them. Who has the team ready to play? Who can actually get forward and get it done when it matters? If three regular season losses, two regular season losses for Ohio State at this point would probably put people in a little panic situation, especially from the fan base. It's Ohio State. Ryan Day, you got to get focused. James Franklin, you got to win a big game. Which of you will get your teams prepared, ready to show up on this field? I mean, that's why it's a new game. Everyone's going to be watching. You've got to show up and get it done. In the end, I've gone back and forth on this, but I trust Ryan Day. I trust Will Howard. I trust Ohio State across the board more than I trust Penn State at home. The Ohio State name, logo, image, standard, there's something that Penn State just can't, they're scared of. And it's in the back of their heads. Ohio State will come in, they will fire up, they'll play they'll play the best game of the year to date, and they will beat Penn State. And they'll beat them by double digits. It'll be an emphatic win.
I hope you're right, Fresh. I hope you're right. My big question, I'm going to start over at Penn State first. My big question is Drew Allar. You play right now, most recent report, they don't put out injury reports like the NFL, unfortunately, guys. Drew Allar right now is being projected as a game time decision. Now, I raised some questions on this knee injury that he has because he does not come out and play in the second half, and Penn State's losing to Wisconsin. If this is not a significant injury, I would have a hard time believing like he's coming out in that game. Again, maybe it was a sprain, maybe it was a bruise, what have you. I don't know. There's some questions that I really would love to know. I really do wish we had injury reports in this day and age. But again, they're going to do the gamesmanship thing. They're saying Drew Allar is a game time decision. The other question I have, though, is people forget, like, everyone's going to put the focus on Allar. Their right tackle was dealing with the injury in Wisconsin. He doesn't finish the game. So does their defensive end, Dennis Sutton. He struggles in that football game. I don't think the injury is as serious for either one of them, but those are going to be huge factors in this football game. Injuries are actually playing a huge role in this football game. For Penn State to win, James Franklin wants this game. like more than he wants air to breathe, he wants this football game. He wants Penn State to beat Ohio State or beat Michigan. Now, you don't get to play the Wolverines this year, so you don't have that opportunity. He needs a win like this because anytime someone talks about James Franklin, it's like, yeah, James Franklin is a great football coach. Penn State wins 10 football games, but he can't beat the two top teams in the Big Ten. Soon going to be probably replacing Michigan with Oregon there. He needs this win in order for him to kind of take his place in the pantheon in coaching. For Penn State to really get the respect that they deserve. Again, Fresh, you said it correctly. They got to run the football. If Penn State runs the football in this football game and is able to get a nice rushing attack going against the Buckeyes, it does raise a level of concern to me. I need to see that. I think Ohio State is going to sell out against the run, and I think they're going to force them to beat them in the passing game. Which wide receiver is going to step up for Penn State? You know, everyone talked about Julian Fleming transferring over from Ohio State into Happy Valley. Kid's got 10 catches on the year. Is it going to be Harrison Wallace? Is it going to be Clifford? Who's it going to be that steps up in the wide receivers to really amplify this passing attack? Tyler Warren's been a nice tight end for them. Really good football player. Impressed by him. Can do a little bit of everything. For the Buckeyes. All right. Just like Fresh leads off with he's a diehard Georgia fan. I'm a diehard Ohio State fan. And I'm gonna accentuate the positives first here as well. Will Howard, you came in, you transferred from K-State. I was nervous about Will Howard transferring from Ohio State. I wondered where his completion percentage would be. There are times where he didn't look great at Kansas State. He was very, very good, but didn't look great. And he has come out and just blown my expectations out of the water. Guy's been phenomenal. He's been exactly what Ohio State needs. The kid's completing 74% of his passes, 17 touchdowns. Yeah, people will bring up the slide at Oregon, but if that's really your nitpicking point with a game that you're putting that one play as the biggest thing, I think you're looking too hard for it. Jeremiah Smith, he's about ready to break all of Chris Carter's freshman receiving records, so that's just been downright fun to watch that guy. I'm intrigued. Does he break the record for receiving touchdowns this game, or is it going to be the next game? Where's that going to happen as well? But here's what I'm going to say. Ohio State, what are we doing on the offensive line? What are we doing? Josh Simmons goes down at left tackle in the Oregon game. You had 2 weeks to get ready for the game. You didn't have a real good plan at left tackle. Nebraska was able to get a pass rush against you. And while Will Howard still had a good game, the running backs did not. Go back and look at the rush per average for each one of them and then start taking out their top runs. And they're only getting 1 or 2 yards a carry. Don't ever say there is anything about the vision of Quashon Judkins and Travion Henderson, two of the best running backs in college football. That's an offensive line problem. That's a Justin Fry problem as well. I'm not a fan of it. You got to figure out your backup left tackle went out against Nebraska. We don't know what his status is for the game, but it doesn't look good. Are they going to kick Donovan Jackson out to left tackle? Who are they going to bring in? And is this offensive line going to be able to handle, because Penn State's pass rush is better than Nebraska. Nebraska has a good defense. We're excited to see the return of the black shirt defense. But guess what? You're going up against Penn State. They're ranked number 3 for a reason here, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, the AP is full of crap. I don't think they're maybe the third best team, but they're definitely a top 10 team, top 8 team, top 5 team. I'll give them that. They're in that area, and they've done exactly what we've told them to do. Win all of your football games. The defense, the cornerbacks, I don't know if you've recovered. I don't know if your confidence was shaken in the Oregon game with Evan Stewart and all of them going wild on you as well. The corners have not looked the greatest for me. And all of a sudden, everyone wants to just point the finger at Ryan Day. It's easy to talk about a person's negative. the dude still constantly delivers you top 5 recruiting classes. The dude continues to have Ohio State as one of the top teams in the country. Everyone will point to the losses. They'll point to the record against Michigan. They'll point to the records against top 5 teams. They'll do all of that fun stuff. And again, yeah, Ryan's got to answer to that, and he's got to own up to those facts. At the same time, too, it doesn't take away he's a damn good football coach. And I think he passionately cares about what we're doing here as well. I don't think he's overmatched. I think that he's got a chance. But Ohio State, you got to prove something this week. You got to prove that loss in Oregon is not going to tailspin out your season, because not only do you have Penn State, but you have a really good Indiana team in a couple weeks. A really good Indiana team.
And Rourke
will be back. And guys, if you haven't watched Indiana this year, tune in on an Indiana game, because that's a really good football team in Bloomington, and they're playing with a lot of fire. I don't know, Fresh. I need to see something out of Ohio State this week before I hit the panic button and start to go, because I'm with it. I'm in the doomsday scenario right now, where if they lose this football game, I'm ready to hit that panic button. Now, I will be a very mean and nasty person if they lose this game, and I would highly recommend, outside of you, Fresh, and maybe our producer here, from talking college football with me, and probably my father as well, because he'll be on the same side with me. But Ohio State fans are going to be angry about this if they lose this football game.
To get to the anger, sorry, 2 losses, 2 conference losses would be terrible. Same thing with Georgia, because we still have to play, Ole Miss, got Gators here, you got Tennessee coming up. But if they look completely lethargic, like if the team that showed up versus Nebraska shows up versus Penn State, that's a problem for Ryan Day and the whole coaching staff. If the team that shows up versus Oregon, where it's just a back and forth shootout, which one would you feel worse about? Like losing a close loss, or just having the team just almost no show, or just not look inspired?
It depends on why we lose the football game. If we lose the football game just because, we did everything in our power and it's a defensive issue, that would bother me too, because I really like Jim Knowles and I like what we have on defense. I think Will Howard is pissed off in this game too, because guys, Will Howard is from Pennsylvania and was not recruited by Penn State. He's got a major chip on his shoulder for this game. If it is Penn State just flat out outplays them.
Now the one good thing is that there's not a defensive back on the Penn State roster that can hold a bucket of water, Jeremiah Smith or Buka.
God.
If you get the running game going, the 2 of them are going to have a field day. So that's where you have to be like, you got to strike and get up to Penn State early. Do not give them a chance to come back. If you have the ground game, you have the passing attack. On paper, the team should be able to take care of business without ease. But you know what? That's why we play the games.
Right. It'll be a tough one for me. I hate sometimes picking on my own games. I hate watching this. And again, to be the man, you got to beat the man, to quote Ric Flair. And I'll take the Buckeyes in this game. Again, the Drew Allard thing makes me a little nervous. That one makes me really, really nervous. I want to see a little bit better out of Penn State if they can handle it without him. But the backup is a little more mobile of a quarterback, so it could give Ohio State some fits on that regard. I'll take the Buckeyes in this game. I don't know about the points or anything like that. 3.5 is not huge, but
before we jump to our brown water bets, last year we had a scenario where there was an undefeated football team who lost their quarterback and was kept out of the playoff. How will the committee treat Drew Allard and Penn State if Allard does not play in this ballgame?
I think it's different because Drew Allard is not the entire team. Like Jordan Travis was, if he, and again, we made this statement, and I thought this was the greatest argument. If Jordan Travis was so important to Florida State in their 13-0 season, he should have won the Heisman then. Should have been the Heisman Trophy winner because he was that important to an undefeated team. I think the difference in this situation is that the committee can point to Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton and go, that's the reason why we're not going to keep him out. Now, I think they'll drop him back into the 8, 12 range.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think that they would be like completely like kept out just because Drew Alar isn't playing for them. So
but that's where the standard's going to be. And the question will have to be asked to the committee if there's any discrepancies. How are they using that precedent that was set going forward?
Right. And it's a high level standard when you're at Ohio State. All right, Fresh. Let's go to our Brownwater bets on this weekend here. I had a pretty good week last week. You had a great week in Vegas.
Well, I had a great week in Vegas. I think on Saturday, college football alone, I cashed 13 tickets for all sizable returns. But going my first Brownwater bet for this episode, somehow Vanderbilt at Auburn. Auburn's favored. I'm taking Vandy money line plus 200. Let's go, Doors.
Yep. I took Vandy as well just because of that there, Fresh. I don't think Auburn is very good, and I think Vandy is playing with some fire there. So I'm with you on this. I'm taking Vandy money line.
Vandy's played amazing. They're not afraid of a showdown to anybody, and all Auburn did was go beat Kentucky. Somebody might know something, but I think Diego Pavia and Clark Lee and the Commodores are ready to go down to the Plains and take care of business.
Yeah. Fresh, my game for Brownwater bet this week is the UCLA traveling to Nebraska. I'm taking Nebraska and the -6.5. Nebraska needs one more win to be bowl eligible. This game is in Nebraska. Nebraska is going to do everything in their power to put the boots to UCLA. I feel like this is a lock here with Nebraska winning.
I got the -6.5 for them to cover too. You figure you get your break speed off of Indiana, you bounce back and you go toe to toe with Ohio State. If they take that and go forward, UCLA is not very good. Get it done, punish them, play physical football, and get that bowl eligibility. Keep building that program like Matt Rule does.
Yeah. All right, Fresh. Our game that was given to us by our producer, it is Arizona traveling to UCF. Arizona is a 6.5 point underdog to UCF, which is kind of weird to me.
A Wildcat. I mean, I think it's just the Wildcats going all the way from Arizona to Florida. McMillan, that Wildcat football team, come off a loss to West Virginia at home. I think that also factors in with that loss to West Virginia at home, then coming to fly out east. I still like the Wildcats. Even though RJ Harvey for UCF is an amazing running back, I like the Wildcats to come in, get the win. Money line Arizona plus 190. I'm taking that.
Ooh, taking Arizona. I'm taking Arizona and the 6.5. I won't go full on money line because, again, like you said, traveling all the way across the country. Is this a noon kick, I believe?
Noon or 3:30. But you know what?
3:30 kick.
I'm going to tell you right now, Vegas, odds makers everywhere, please continue your trend of giving BYU plus money because I'm just making money off y'all right now.
Oh yeah, I've done very well with BYU and the Mormons on that one. But yeah, I'm taking the Wildcats in the 6.5, getting 6.5 on that one as well. I don't trust the UCF either. So
no, I think Gus Malzahn is they've definitely failed to live up to expectations.
Absolutely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're part of Spinnable Sports, so make sure you go to spinnablesports.com. Yep, that is spinnablesports.com. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, get notified every single time we drop a new episode. We're going to cruise all the way to Rivalry Week, which is the biggest week of the college football season. And we're going to break down when the playoff committee announces their rankings early on in the month of November here coming up. A lot of fun stuff coming your way. Lock in with us. Follow us on the X and engage with us. Interact with us. We love talking to you guys. That's all I got, Fresh. It's been a great week. Glad to have you back in the state of Florida here. And it's a good weekend for college football like it is every week because it's week 10.
Week 10, everybody enjoy every moment. Embrace the college football. Watch every night. We got some about action on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We got games on Thursdays. Embrace it all. Embrace it all. Enjoy college football. Hit us on the spinovasports.com, Spinova Sports YouTube channel. Subscribe, spread the word. Also all the other audios, podcast channels. And with that, we'll talk to you next week. Bye, y'all.